Hello everybody, welcome to a very special vidIQ live stream where today we're going to talk about YouTube, making money on YouTube and platforms beyond YouTube in 2018. Let's do this.
vidIQ.
vidIQ.
vidIQ.com.
It is so good to see all of you today. My name is Rob. If this is your first time here on vidIQ, we are the YouTube tool and channel that aims to help you get more views in less time by educating you on your YouTube journey. And we know that a lot of you are always asking questions about monetization, building a brand, and maximizing the income that you can have on YouTube and of course platforms beyond. And we're so honored to be joined today by our very special guest, who is Ben Grubbs, formerly the Global Director of Top Creator Partnerships at YouTube, now the Chief Executive Officer at Next 10 Ventures. And over the next hour, we're going to be asking Ben lots of questions about monetization and earning an income on YouTube and beyond. So folks, if you do have any questions, make sure you get them ready. Hello to you, Ben. Welcome to vidIQ.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I guess the first question that we should probably ask you is if you just give us a little bit more about the background and what you can add to the conversation for video creators who are earning money and trying to make a business out of their content.
Sure. So, as you said earlier, I was most recently with YouTube, based in Los Angeles, and managing a team looking after the top creator partnerships team globally. I spent 5.5 years with the company, originally starting first in the Singapore office and focused on the creator ecosystem in the Asia Pacific region, and then over the last several years, actually on a global basis. But a lot of the time I spent at the company was, focused on how to incubate and work with new creators new to the platform in a variety of different content categories, and then later working with larger, more well-established creators and how they were expanding, diversifying what they were actually doing on YouTube, and expanding that in terms of content, but also in monetization.
And so what sort of subscriber size channels would you be typically working with? You said at the beginning you were working with maybe all channels, or was it mostly the larger channels?
I would work with folks that were well under 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
I think, generally, I would say someone was probably like 30 to 50,000, and or kind of up to 100,000 in the beginning. And then I think really starting to kind of get their footing on the platform.
Yeah.
And then later, working with folks that have millions or over 10 million subscribers.
Wow. So like channels with billions of views, even more watch time, and this opportunity to, as we say, not only through AdSense, but certainly other revenues. And we'll get onto that into more detail later on. I think the first question I want to ask is to try and establish a landscape of YouTube these days. As a video creator, do you think that the business model has fully matured on YouTube? Just to give you a bit of context, where I was a single video creator, and I think I first monetized my channel in 2013, and it felt a little bit like the Wild West at that time. Like any video creator with any resources could get a certain number of views and then start to monetize their content. But in the last couple of years, big businesses have moved into YouTube. They're a lot more savvy in the potential to earn an income on YouTube. YouTube has had negative press recently and have reined in the requirements. Is the day of a solo video creator dead, or is it just a lot tougher to break out as a creator these days?
I think we're quite bullish on this space. I left Google in February to start Next 10 Ventures, and the core focus actually of the company is actually investing into the content creator ecosystem and to support and partner with creators that are both at the early stage of their journey, and also folks that are well established. And again, as I was saying before, are looking to kind of expand and diversify what they're doing. So we're all in actually on the creator ecosystem. And again, I think we see a lot of value creation still to be done or to be had, and pretty excited about the future.
What would you say then is the most exciting money-making tool or opportunity that's coming out of YouTube, maybe like in the past 12 months? We know that with sponsorships and memberships have started to appear for larger channels. Merch stores are now being fully integrated into channels rather than them having to do it through a third-party source. Wherever you think the opportunities beyond AdSense, you can maximize your income most on YouTube.
Sure. So you touched on three different kind of alternative monetization revenue streams. I think first with sponsorships and what YouTube's been doing with FameBit, I think is great for the ecosystem and how it's driving transparency for creators and actually looking to enhance some of the experience with some of the brands and the marketers who are advertising on the platform. So it's not just measurement through views, but actually understanding impact on brand measurement. So brand awareness, brand consideration, brand recall. I think that's actually a good move. And I think the whole aim is having marketers, stay committed to advertising and marketing on the platform. On the creator side, actually having more transparency over deals, deal amounts, what amount of revenue is actually flowing down to them, I think is ultimately a good thing. And so I think the way that YouTube's trying to tackle that, looking at different stakeholders actually in the ecosystem and what the team at FameBit is doing is generally positive for the space. Memberships, early days, but I think also a positive kind of move forward. And I think for creators that have a pretty vibrant fan following and how you're trying to strengthen the fanship and what you're doing, and just understanding that folks actually might want more than the content you're kind of putting up. And so whether that's having early access to content, access to special kind of live streams, or I think we've seen a lot is over the years with the growth of live streaming and live chat and features like super chat, how that then kind of bridges into badges, emoticons, stickers, and things like this. And so new ways to kind of monetize. I've seen a lot of advancement in the Asia region, going back close to 10 years now, with how creators in that region have actually been using live streaming and really engaging their audience and through direct-to-consumer monetization. So it's great to see that kind of being adopted on a broad level on the platform. And then the last piece, so we talked about memberships, sponsorship, and then the last piece that you were talking through was on if you could remind me again. Sorry.
Merchandising.
Merchandise, yeah, sorry. So I think on that front, again, I think also a positive thing for creators, because before you were having to kind of link, if you had actually something to sell or drive to e-commerce, you're just doing that through links in the description. Yeah. So you kind of actually bring more real estate front and center to the viewer and overall enhance kind of the buying experience. I think addressing some of the friction points and making that a more seamless experience. I think if it's good for the user and they're converting to sale, that's ultimately good for the creator. So I think generally kind of positive that there's a lot of advancement happening across multiple fronts. And I think as much as AdSense and TrueView and that advertising format, I think continues to kind of get optimized and grows. I think it's also good that there's other revenue streams as well that are getting solid attention.
And just as you say that, we get our first super chat of this live stream. Thank you very much to LBS King Nova, who simply says hello, but we do appreciate the super chat. If we talk a little bit now, Ben, about the company that you are with now, which is Next 10 Adventures, the forecast for global creator economy, excluding China, is reaching $23 billion, which is just an astronomical number, which it seems impossible to comprehend, but when you think of how big YouTube is, it makes sense. I want to know what your I guess mission statement behind this company is, and how would you assess a channel and where their income streams potentially could come from?
Sure. So I mean, I think the first piece is the common thread across everything that we're doing is the focus on the creator and the broader kind of creator ecosystem, and where we see that kind of going in the creator economy that you just spoke to, what we're really focused on is I think trying to partner with creators and understanding what their focus is, their agenda. And one area that we're trying to really dig deep into is creators that are entrepreneurs that are building brands, building businesses, how they're thinking about shaping that brand and business in that early stage, but also scaling that and growing that for the long run. The notion of next 10 speaks to the next 10 years. A lot of the conversations I've had with creators over the years that have been on the platform for 5 or 10 years, I would ask them how are they thinking about the next 10 years, and how are they planning for the future. They made this into a career, into a livelihood. I've worked with many people who it's no longer themselves, they actually employ people, so there's a small business in place. It could be 5 people, it could be 10. I've seen some creators that where it was them and one other partner that now it's a company of 200 people and still just focused on, prime distribution is happening through a platform like YouTube. So fantastic kind of to see some of that growth over the years. We're looking at how we can bring operational experience and know-how in product development, brand building, monetization, but then also bring capital to the table so we can partner with creators, help shape business and product plans, and then put capital against that and grow that together.
I think probably the most interesting thing that I caught out when you were talking is thinking of video creators as entrepreneurs. How do you think that's a common trait of successful video creators, in that they're not just thinking about the content that they're producing to get a like on YouTube or a subscriber? They're actually thinking in much broader terms when you meet these creators.
Yeah, I think it's an evolution. I think the platform. To what you kind of spoke about. If you go back to 10 years ago, where you didn't have monetization in a widespread kind of manner, I think a lot of the creators that were actually kind of active on the platform were it was a hobby. It was something fun to do with family or friends. YouTube was an easy place to it was an easy way to share video. But I think as more people kind of were coming to the platform, consuming content, commenting, liking, responding back to that creator saying, enjoyed what you did, looking forward to kind of the next upload. There starts kind of be a transition of like, oh, it's not just me that enjoys this and cares about this. There's a community out there that is giving me positive encouragement, and so people kind of carry on. We're I think well past that, and well past that point, and I think it's more understood today that you got young people who aspire to grow up and their profession is a YouTuber. I've seen this with my kids who are in elementary school, and I've seen this in their yearbook when kids who are in 5th grade stating what do they want to be when they grow up, and there are kids in my son and daughter's school that they listed YouTuber in the yearbook. So you see that from an aspiration standpoint. I think you also see it in terms of the influence that content creators actually have on young people, and this has been cited in many markets around the world, where YouTubers actually rank higher than traditional celebrities in the manner of their influence on teenagers. And so it's not just a U.S. phenomenon. This has been cited in Latin America, Asia, and also in Europe. And so I think I think there's like this understanding of like you can make a career, you can make actually a livelihood out of this. And so I think the way we're trying to come and approach this is a real thing today, and we want to have it continue to be a real thing for the next 10 years. So how do we plan properly and go into this with the right intentions actually for long-term kind of value creation? Think hard. I think about like what we're trying to, or who we're trying to partner with, what we're trying to build, thinking about that impact that we're actually trying to also have into the market and with consumers. So I did kind of highlight entrepreneurs, but I think just as much there are folks who are artistically driven, and their aspiration is to be a storyteller, and to be a strong storyteller. And so I think platforms like YouTube afford them that opportunity to tell their stories in the way that they actually want to do that. And maybe 5 years ago, the aspiration was transition off of YouTube to television. But I think today the reach that you actually get from a channel on YouTube can outweigh what you actually get on television. So it might then just be more of, how do I tell stories in the way I want to tell it and make that commercially viable? And so I think there's still room to grow, I think in the online video economics, where, folks who are, into more special effects or, heavy kind of post-production, how you can kind of afford that if it's, if AdSense or brand sponsorship actually isn't sufficient, how you kind of go on from there. And I think we also see folks that are educators, and I've worked with many over the years that don't have any aspiration of fame and fortune. Their aspiration is to inspire and to enrich others. Many actually turn ads off on their channel. They don't, again, they're not driven by the AdSense kind of money itself. But I think what we think about is, like, for that group, how can we help spotlight and drive sustainability in that space, because there's a lot of good that actually comes out of education content. And then I think there's also a category of folks that are opinion leaders, and the digital version of the restaurant critic in the newspaper, or the tech reviewer, and where you would have read Walt Mossberg in the Wall Street Journal in the past, now you get Unbox Therapy. And so I think for a new generation, that's growing up, that television isn't the prime medium. They're not actually getting the newspaper, at their doorstep. It's video on their phone and through platforms like YouTube. I think there's a lot of different ways of which you can find an audience, build a community. So I think some are going to be entrepreneurial driven, and what they're thinking about is the business. But I think others, as I was just saying, artistically, education, or their opinion leaders.
Thank you to Michael Gaming Channel, another super chat here of $2. Appreciate it. And Straight Up Eats was just agreeing with you, Ben, saying, yes, it's very true. I teach in a Japanese high school, and the kids say they want to be YouTubers as a career. So it's fascinating how maybe this generation will be known as the YouTube generation in the future. Now, a question, putting you on the spot a little bit here. How many creators do you think you've worked with roughly in your time?
At YouTube?
Yeah, well, just anywhere, I would say.
Personally, I mean, I think it's in the hundreds.
Okay. So with that being said, what do you think, is there a common trait, a personality trait, or something that you notice in successful video creators, whether it's they're wholly driven, or they're as you say, they aspire to teach people, or they have a very specific value proposition? What would you say most successful YouTubers have in their arsenal?
The things that come to mind is like passion and some drive, and personality. I mean, I think YouTube itself, it is a social network of sorts. I think people are kind of drawn to the creators actually with personality. You subscribe to their channel, you're part of a community within a broader community, and so I think folks that kind of recognize that, lean into that, and foster that, actually, I think can do quite well. But I think the first piece is some passion and drive, and that it's not easy. I think being a successful creator, and I think if it was simple, there would be tens of thousands of people with 1 million subscribers, but that's not the. And so I think it's hard in those early days when you're actually trying to get your channel just to be able to monetize, or you're trying to actually get your first kind of subscribers, and then going on actually from there, and even get to the point where it's like, hey, I can actually make this a livelihood. So that's not something that's going to happen overnight. That's actually going to take, I think, a lot of time and dedication. But I think the folks that have that passion and have that drive, are the ones that are successful. And I think, and also successful for a long term. and that it can become a grind. And so I think how you kind of work through that. I think there's a problem today with burnout, with mental health, and I think just some of the stress that actually comes with fame and fortune to those at a young age, and how you're kind of grappling and dealing with that. So I think to also kind of like persevere, it kind of comes down to why did you start doing this in the first place? What motivated you? Again, I think it goes back to like what is your passion? I would think that a lot of people actually kind of respond to those that actually exude that passion, and that's part of the personality that they actually have.
It's interesting that you talk about burnout and YouTube being very hard. YouTube have recently released some tools for people to help with their digital well-being. Do you think they're doing enough for video creators themselves? There's been channels that have talked about if you take a break from your channel, does it affect if your future videos are going to be as shared on YouTube? Any general thoughts on that area?
I mean, I think it's an area that will continue to need more focus and attention. I think some of it maybe comes to the state of where we are, in that the platform itself is gone on now for 12, 13 years, and so it's long enough that I think creators have actually kind of gone through some cycles, and I've seen. With some folks, you can kind of hit a hump like around like year 5, 6, and it's like, am I going to kind of push through kind of after that? How do I get kind of creatively re-inspired? And because if you've been doing it on a solid basis for 5 years, there's a lot of creators I know that work independently, so it can feel actually quite insular. Like this is not like working in an office environment, for some. So again, it's I think where people kind of have that or find that passion and that drive. So on a broader basis, I think it's an area that we think about a lot, and that we actually want to play an active role, and driving some of the conversation, and also programs, services, and different things around creator health and well-being, because as a company, our focus is on the long-term growth and sustainability of the creator ecosystem. And I think our point of view is that if we care about that, we need to also kind of care about the creator's actually own well-being. And like you can't have poor kind of well-being, but I would say kind of be successful for the long run. So our focus and our point of view is that, as I was saying earlier, we're quite bullish about the space, and the space actually for the long run. And so we want to make sure that, I'd say, from the bottom up, that things are actually being addressed. So that's one part to it. And then I think the second part of your question was around, so one piece was just like the focus of well-being, but sorry, if you could restate the second part again.
I think the second part of the question was, how do video creators still feel as if the algorithm can sometimes be against them and their digital well-being?
Sure. So so for YouTube and search and discovery, in general audience development, everything is optimized towards the viewer. And so I think over time, as you have more people kind of coming to YouTube, it's nearly 2 billion people logged in on YouTube every single month. So it's a substantial audience. And what I saw over the tenure that I actually had at the company was the frequency of which people were coming to YouTube increased quite a lot. And when I joined the company back in 2012, I think the number of visits per user per month was in the single digits, and over time that's become into the double digits. And so I think there's a correlation there to creators that are uploading content every day and somewhat episodic, that actually aligns with people who are coming to the platform on a more frequent basis.
Mm.
And so I think sometimes it might be kind of felt like, oh, YouTube cares about or is emphasizing daily vlogs and daily uploaders, and it's like not like someone like one person at YouTube's deciding that. It's more the viewer behavior, and you have viewers coming to YouTube more often, and as they're doing that more often, they're subscribing and viewing channels on a more regular basis. And so again, there's that correlation that was going on there. So now I think what that can also drive is, I think for someone who has a content format that is not conducive to uploading 5 or 7 times a week, it then can kind of be a struggle. But I think then it goes back down to how are you working on your community development. I know, like over the last year, there's the channel Lucas the Spider, which my kids like a lot, and now it's like 2.5 million subscribers, if I remember correctly, and that channel has 9 videos. So it breaks the mold. It's not uploading every day. It's not even uploading every single week.
And if I'm right, I think each of those videos are less than a minute long, which flies in the face of other YouTube laws that are watch time is the most important metric.
Well, I think it goes against, there's this notion that like, oh, YouTube only cares about videos that are over 10 minutes in length.
Yeah.
Theory going around that is like, oh, it's that because of advertising. Again, I think some of the stuff is actually user behavior, but I think the other part there, and I know this having spent time with a lot of the product managers there, they don't necessarily want to see the platform have this bias, only to kind of daily vloggers and uploaders, because then creators like the person behind Lucas the Spider, then it's like, well, why would I even go to the platform?
Yeah.
If I don't want to upload every day, then it's not for me. But I think at a very high level, the way that YouTube would look at it is like, no, we want to be a platform for every type of creator. So, provided that you're actually trying to make content, it's not one-to-one and it's not one-to-few, it's more one-to-many. And then whatever that content actually kind of may be, and that format and that frequency, and it's like, it's not a great thing if the only way to succeed is you have to upload every day.
Yeah.
It's not everyone can do that.
Let's move on to the small video creators. So somebody is if they are going to build a business out of it, it's like the first step to monetizing their content. And a lot of subscribers here at vidIQ are working hard to the YouTube Partner Program, monetizing their channel. What would you say to an individual video creator that's trying to get 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 hours of watch time? Should that be the first step to starting their business? And do you think it's a fair barrier to entry, or are people worrying too much about trying to hit the goal of monetizing their content too early in their development as a video creator?
Potentially. I mean, so there's one thing you said there, which was like starting a business. And I guess I would first start with just the question on like, is this actually really a business at that stage?
Right.
Or is this a personal passion? Is this a hobby? And then, monetization is a byproduct and it's a benefit versus it's the primary goal and the whole reason for doing this in the first place. So I think I would just start to think about the objective and those initial kind of goals. And if the prime goal is financial return, then yes, you're going to want to figure out a way through either AdSense or it's going to be through sponsorship. But in either case, both are going to be based around metrics of views and actually having that be sustainable over time. And so you're going to need to go and build that up. I was saying before that I think this is not the platform's not one where you're going to have success overnight, or that is not the case for the majority of people. And so I think with that, then I would just go back to like what your passion is, and the motivation for what you're trying to do. And I would just say kind of focus on, you know, your own kind of either personal brand or the brand that you're actually trying to develop. That tone, that personality. Some of that stuff is maybe not going to be super clear up front, and it's only by doing, by trial, that starts to kind of come out, and you might have, you know, thoughts and theories of what you think is going to resonate, and then as you start to kind of produce content and you get kind of commentary and feedback, you might need to kind of pivot and tweak. So I don't think it's that everyone and what they start with is generally then where they kind of end up. I think the great thing about YouTube is you get that instant kind of feedback. You know, different than TV, you're not getting kind of a rating sample and getting it 30 days, 45 days, like after the fact. Like you're getting, you know, feedback through real-time analytics, or you know, next day, next 2 days, and from there, I think is starting to kind of see what that data seems to kind of show and suggest, and how you're interpreting that, and how you kind of evolve from there.
Just one more question on the small video creator landscape then. What another problem with these new requirements is that a lot of them find themselves in this monetization limbo, where a channel goes under review by YouTube and they don't hear anything from YouTube for months. Now, with you formerly working at YouTube, is there any sort of insight you could give into YouTube's perspective as to why this happens and why it's important to them to monetize channels responsibly? Because I think probably one of the biggest frustrations from video creators' aspect is I'm a small channel, I try to monetize my content, YouTube have done this with my channel, I can't get any information off them, I'm a little disenfranchised at this point.
Yeah, it's not a great situation.
Yeah,
from the creator standpoint. So I completely see that. I think so. The other stakeholder in this equation is the advertiser.
yeah,
And I think over the last two years now, there's been a heightened awareness in the advertising community. So with the marketers themselves, with their advertising agencies, just being a lot more aware of the media that they're buying, and where their brand messages are being placed. And so it's not just kind of reach and frequency, it's understanding the context and the environment of in which their advertising is being distributed. And I think what that's kind of resulted in is there were, you know, channels later that were just deemed like not suitable for all advertisers. You know, prior to that point, you know, could monetize at a certain level, and later, and I think with advertisers becoming more aware of that context, that environment, and then actually having more you know, features and tools of how they can actually manage you know, their advertising. As an example, you know, giving an advertiser the option to opt out of content with profanity. You know, so if you have a lot of advertisers basically say, well, if you're giving me the choice, yeah, I'm going to go and opt out. Well, you know, content that then has profanity, you know, is not going to monetize nearly at the rate that it was before. If more advertisers are kind of opting out of that environment. So I think one is just the overall change in dynamic, I think, on the marketers front, and some of the demands that they were kind of putting on YouTube for more features, more tools to better kind of manage their campaigns online. So that's one side of it. And I think then the other side is, you know, YouTube making a promise to the advertising community that, you know, when they say they want to, you know, advertise their company or their product and service in a certain way or with a certain environment, is then ensuring that the execution follows through with the promise. And so then you need to make sure that you know, content and channels, you're more aware of where they fall, I think, in that environment. And so with that, well, the only way to kind of do it is you need to go through a review process. So I think, you know, having channels have to have some kind of time on the platform with views, watch time, subscribers. I think gives YouTube and the system and more time to kind of learn what this channel is about, what the content's kind of about, and so before it opens it up and exposes it into the broad kind of advertising pool, it already has some kind of track record to understand that. And so I think that's, as I was seeing it, kind of at a very broad level, some of the dynamics that are actually in play.
I think that's the great point that you bring up about there is another stakeholder in this. It's not just the video creator wanting to earn money. It's like, where does that money come from? Advertisers. And I think sometimes certainly smaller video creators are not really aware of that point. One more question on YouTube is what could YouTube do better today to convince disenfranchised video creators to stay on the platform? If it was anything that you think YouTube could improve right now?
Well, I maybe some of it's just around like kind of the messaging, in that what I was saying earlier is that the platform now is nearing 2 billion logged in users a month, which is a massive audience. So you have more people on YouTube coming to YouTube every day, spending more time on YouTube than ever before. You have more, advertising, I think, going into the system, into that ecosystem than ever before. So your ability to reach an audience is better than it's ever been. Your ability, I think, to monetize, I think at an aggregate level, is better than it's ever been. So I think there's a lot of kind of growth and trajectory there, which is positive. The company is focused a lot on bringing another billion people online. This is broader Google, but YouTube is a key kind of player in this. So I think you're going to continue to see user growth, but it's going to be coming from places outside of the U.S. And so from markets like Southeast Asia, India, Latin America, Africa. And so I think when you get into some of these alternative monetization models, because in some of those markets, the advertising community is not as advanced as what we might see here in the US. But you have kind of user engagement and adoption. And I think if there's ways to not be solely dependent on AdSense, but actually have other methods of monetization, then you can see commercial return on the back of that audience growth and reach. But I think like just at a very high level, the reach potential, the monetization potential, and I'd say kind of going forward in terms of emerging market growth, I think are all kind of positive signs, I think, for the platform. And again, why we are quite bullish about the space and actually wanting to continue to invest into it.
Awesome. So that's YouTube. Let's talk about the video platform space on the internet as a whole. A huge disruptor that recently came out, IGTV, had some pretty interesting news in the last week with, I believe, is it the co-founders who have left. Is IGTV a credible threat to YouTube's number one position, or is threat the wrong word? What do you see on IGTV so far, Ben?
I don't see it so much as a threat. I mean, I think from again, just looking at this from the different kind of stakeholder sides, I would say for creators, it's a new format, or a different format, or it's a platform to kind of produce and distribute content in different ways than you would maybe otherwise do it through YouTube. So there can be engagement and happening in different ways than you would otherwise see there. They have 1 billion people on the platform there. So again, I think from some of the stat or points I was making before, just around reach and commercial return. Also, I know like some of their growth markets actually mirror the same kind of growth markets as YouTube. A lot of these international kind of emerging markets, all kind of positive signs there. And so I think from a creator lens, then it's kind of thinking about how do I want to engage folks across different platforms. This is not a new thing. I mean, I think folks in the past have been active through Twitter, You know, active through platforms like Facebook or Twitch. You know, could have blogs or websites. So I think this like notion of being kind of multi-platform, that's not a new thing. I think it's just understanding kind of your audience community and how best to kind of engage them on different platforms, the time you're kind of putting into that, and the return. So that's from the creator side. I think on the user side, again, I think that there's been strong growth and adoption there, but I think the content and what's being produced to date, I see it as complementary to a lot of the content that would be produced and distributed through YouTube.
How do we? This is a bit of a beginner's question to IGTV. How would the business and money making opportunities differ from IGT versus, say, YouTube? Obviously, there's no AdSense to begin with, but where else might the income streams differ?
Well, yeah. So the big one is what you just said. I think in the AdSense model and what you kind of get through YouTube is not there's not an apples to apples kind of comparison through Instagram and IGTV. But I think the other two things that come to mind there, and I think are robust on the platform, is direct brand sponsorships and also e-commerce and merchandise. In the way that you can actually drive to merchandise sales through an e-commerce kind of store is pretty active, through Instagram, and I know they're focusing more on enabling more of that, addressing some of the friction points. Same things that I think that YouTube is actually looking at. The product team at Instagram is acutely aware of user demand and opportunity. I think on the sponsorship side and in branded posts, that's been there for quite a while. So it's not so much of a different thing, I think, than YouTube, because it also exists there on YouTube, but it's the means of execution can be slightly different, more kind of product placement, endorsement, whereas YouTube is a lot of, you can also get down the path of bespoke content creation and producing series and shorts and different things.
Now, one of the people on the live stream here, I think it's Instagram, that's a very appropriate username, is saying, come on, Rob, IGTV is not so much important. That leads on to the next question I was going to ask you. What would you say to a video creator who's currently on YouTube or like a single video platform and are kind of dismissing IGTV or other platforms, maybe because they have no established presence on there, the amount of time it would take to rework video content versus it's a new platform with lots of opportunity to land grab and establish yourself? What might be the pros and cons of joining IGTV right now?
Well, I think on the pro side is that you're on a platform that already has 1 billion active users. So, man, I think that there is a opportunity cost with everything that you're doing on a multi-platform basis. So, if YouTube is kind of like your core, that's what you wake up and that's what you're kind of thinking about, that's what you're kind of planning, and that's like your hub. And then you got the spokes. And so that could be through your website, it could be through Twitter, it could be through Instagram and things like this. But it could also be through some mobile kind of live stream app or your own kind of personal app. All these different, there's a lot of different options and possibilities. The way I would kind of look at this is, what that user base is today, and are you really early days and it's still to kind of grow. That could also be a benefit though, and actually kind of getting it early and getting some of the learnings and optimizing as the platform kind of grows. But where it is today, you already have pretty substantial reach to kind of deal with. So that's definitely a pro. I wouldn't say so much of a con, but I'd say just be more aware of the opportunity cost and how you're kind of managing a multi-platform content strategy.
Folks, I'm going to start opening the questions up to the UV audience in a few minutes. I just have one or two more questions for Ben. The next question would be, we've looked at IGT a little bit now. Are there any other business opportunities video creators should be looking out for? Like the one that maybe springs to mind is Amazon Associates, but is there anything beyond that which you think is really exciting in the next 12 months?
I think we've touched on a bunch. I mean, sponsorships. It's not a thing that was kind of coming and going. I think it's here to stay, and it will continue to get optimized and kind of grow. So I think all that is positive for the space. You know, merchandise, e-commerce, and the I think understanding their acceptance of consumers, to buy online, buy through their mobile phone is going to continue to kind of grow. All good signs there. On the direct-to-consumer kind of on digital goods and services, I think as the platforms like YouTube enable things like super chat memberships, what Twitch has done through their platform, again, all positive signs. So yeah, I think that there are a lot of the. I'm not necessarily looking for one new category to kind of open up, and then it's like, oh, now we're dealing with something pretty substantial. I think we already have a lot of different things in the toolbox, but it just goes down to kind of where you're going to focus and where you're going to prioritize. I think across that blend, because they all have different elements of time commitment, time management. But I think again, just staying aware of the effort you're kind of putting in and what that return is, optimizing, kind of carrying forward is would be the recommendation on how to go about this.
And the final question from me, Ben, is as the CEO of Next 10 Adventures, how do you see the video and business landscape evolving over those next 10 years with YouTube and beyond? Bit of a broad question there, so I'm looking forward to the response.
Well, so I look at like a focus group at home with I have 3 kids who are nine, turning 7 and 4, and just look at their media consumption, which is 95%, 99% video on demand. Like there is no real linear television live kind of element in their media diet. I don't really see them kind of moving into that space, and so digital platforms, digital distribution, their notion of a celebrity are people that they know from YouTube. The things I kind of talked about before, I see that with them at home. This is their own kind of growth. This is not necessarily me kind of pushing things actually to them. So I absorb a lot, actually, just kind of seeing how they kind of consume, and then it's like for them all growing up over the next 10 years. So I'm gonna have someone that's nearing 20 and someone that's 2 daughters actually in their teenage years. I just think from that side, the media kind of content consumption, big opportunities there, and how they're kind of growing up and being active kind of consumers in the marketplace. There's a lot of opportunities there as well. So I think the young people we have today, kind of in their tween and teenage years, is providing a pretty robust market for platforms like Instagram, IGTV, YouTube as well. I think what's kind of behind that, with kind of younger kids kind of under 10 and their kind of media consumption, to me it signals that we have a long kind of runway ahead in this digital ecosystem to build brands, build businesses, and create value for the long run.
Would you say now is the most exciting time ever to be in this space?
Yes, it is a good time. I mean, I've been active in online video from 2001.
Wow.
I was, producing live streams back in 2001. So well before YouTube even existed.
What resolution was that at, just out of interest?
Back then we were doing, we gave viewers options. You can access a live stream through 56.6K, 128, 56.6, 128, and like 250 something. I think yeah, the highest bandwidth was like 250K.
I can imagine your face was just comprised of 4 pixels.
Well, yeah. So if like the output looked amazing on the monitor,
Yeah.
when you go to the other side, you see it through like a Windows media player or a real media player, and it was like a postage stamp size. Um, but yeah, I mean, I say because I've been at this for I feel like a decent amount of time, and just watching kind of the space evolve, like knowing what we had to go through just to get a live stream up, back in those days in 2001, and now what you can do just through your mobile phone. It's phenomenal to see kind of the advancements in technology. I think what it's affording, it's bringing more access to way more people than ever before, which is a good thing. And it's awesome seeing kind of the creativity that people have, again, their motivations, their passion and their drive. It's inspiring to me. I think it's what kind of keeps us, motivated to come to work to every day, and just feel kind of blessed that we get to be kind of an active participant in this space, and hopefully be a good partner to a lot of the creators.
All right, we've got a few questions here from the audience, and with the time that we have left. If you do have questions, fire them in now, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. I think the first question came from, it's just gone off screen, but I think it was from Happy Ron Official. Is there any general advice for musicians on YouTube?
Is there any gentle advice?
Any advice for musicians on YouTube? I guess that's when I always think of musicians on YouTube, I think of, are you just putting music on there, or should you be talking about the story of you as a musician to help build your brand? So any experience you have there with musicians being successful on YouTube?
Sure. So I think in the U.S. market, YouTube has for years been cited as the number one, or a top kind of music discovery platform service. I think in days past, like, you were discovering new artists and music through radio, and YouTube has displaced that in a lot of ways, and so which is a good thing. I think you have a lot of artists that don't rely on top 40 radio, and that kind of wheel that goes through radio station that's syndication. And so going back down to kind of building that fan base, that community. I think there's a lot of independent artists actually on the platform that are finding a following, and I've worked with several over the years that I think just like musicians that are signed by labels, actually can have a robust business in the touring aspect, and less on like selling music. That kind of exists for folks that are independent and kind of growing through platforms like YouTube. They're building that community, and that kind of it transitions itself kind of offline into demand for tours, and that also kind of reinforces a community, and it kind of comes back online. So I think there's good growth and opportunity there, just in the general kind of music discovery. The companies I know is investing quite a lot into the premium music service, and that also for artists opens up an additional kind of revenue stream. I was watching that over the last several years with YouTube Premium, and with channels and what they were kind of earning on like the revenue per hour of watch time, and what you would earn through YouTube Premium versus just general YouTube on AdSense. You earn far more money on a revenue per hour basis through YouTube Premium. And so I think as more people subscribe to the service, there's more money kind of in that ecosystem itself and how that's being kind of distributed. But same thing's kind of going with music artists, which is a good thing. And the company I know is spent. I was in New York last week, and all the billboards that I would see around Manhattan for YouTube were all promoting music. The music artists on the rise, the premium service for music as well. And so I think the company is emphasizing a lot there. which, trickles down, I think has a benefit for everyone involved in the space.
Let's have a simple yes or no answer on this one. I would like to know if monetizing videos helps the algorithm to reach more people. So I think, in other words, does monetization affect search and discoverability?
No, it's actually, there is no, there are two different systems.
Yeah.
That are, there's correlation. But the search and discovery is not dependent. It doesn't talk to the advertising system. And like, if you enable monetization, you'll then go and get better search and discovery. And I also kind of know this, having worked with a lot of folks who produce education content that actually disable AdSense altogether. And so if you went with that theory, you would think like, well, YouTube has no motivation to promote this content at all because it doesn't make money. But that's actually not how the platform works. So it's not taking the cue on monetization like at all costs. Now, what I said earlier is there's correlation. And so sometimes content that is suitable for all advertisers is also content that is suitable for all viewers. You have content that, might only be suitable for people over the age of 18, and can be rated in a certain way. That's also content that then is not suitable for all advertisers, because if you're an alcohol brand, you don't want to be advertising to people under the age of 21 here in the United States. And so I think that there's types of content and then types of advertising, and so sometimes you'll see the pool not be meant for wide consumption, and I think there where you see the correlation is where I think some people might draw the conclusion like the advertising setting is what dictates search and discovery, but that's not the case.
Yeah, one of those classic myths, and I think it's been busted right there. A question here from Amir Tavelsoli. Would you recommend a YouTuber with around 12,000 subscribers and monetization options? Should they be even thinking about monetization at this stage? I think to try and make this question a bit broader, should a channel with already a significant number of subscribers just be thinking about one revenue source, which would be AdSense?
I mean, I think I would. So, okay, there's subscribers, but then there's also, views.
Yeah.
You could actually have a channel that drives quite a lot of views, but actually has a low subscriber count. So I kind of want to know a little bit more around kind of the view, kind of the volume and what that kind of looks like. But I would say in the early days, advertising in some cases, it's a nice to have. This is a need to have. And I think if you're kind of going into something with a high kind of cost of production, and there is that high dependency on AdSense kind of revenue return, the reality is that actually that might not be the best format, for the platform at that time. That's just the harsh kind of reality of the situation. Again, I would say back to that early kind of stage is what I've seen a lot on YouTube is, people kind of, they respond to or they gravitate to creators with personality that have kind of a personal brand that are kind of shaping that community. And so I would just stay very focused on discovering that, if that's yet to kind of be really figured out, like what is the brand, what is the tone of my content, of my channel, and getting that right. And I think then instead of kind of chasing metrics and chasing money, it's kind of, I think, focus on the core, focus on what motivates you, where your passion is, where your drive is. I think that's what people are going to ultimately kind of respond to and gravitate to, and then the commercialization follows.
And last question we have here with the time available. Who was it from? Let me just check. The question was, like, any general advice for a gaming channel? I mean, there's so many gaming channels now on YouTube, a very competitive, saturated market. Any thoughts on... I can see you putting your hand on your chin as if this is going to be a difficult one to try and tackle, but any general thoughts there, Ben?
I was trying to rest my back. um, now, general stuff on gaming. So I'll admit I'm not like steeped actually in the gaming space. I mean, a lot of the content I kind of see today through my son is Fortnite related.
Yep.
And so he likes watching Allier, and he was watching Ninja for a bit, but seems to kind of move past him. Um, but yeah, so I think with the new season that just came out, he's deep into that and trying to get news and information. And then with my daughters, because they know the brand from him, but their interest is in creators that actually are doing the Fortnite dance challenges, and so more lifestyle content. So it's just been kind of interesting to see over the course of the year how that brand, that platform has I think like Minecraft kind of before it, um, actually just spawned like there's this massive community, and it's benefited actually I think a lot of creators who do the let's play videos, but then also a lot of this companion content, kind of just as I was saying before, kind of in the dance content. Just really interesting to kind of see how that expands. That was the first thing that kind of came to mind. I think in the general gaming space, I think it's great what both YouTube and Twitch are doing. Um, both are investing in product, product and feature sets. I think a lot of things that YouTube's done around super chat, around memberships, actually was driven first by the game community. That's actually where it kind of came from, and now it's kind of expanded into the wider kind of creator community. But the early adopters were all gamers, and so it's a fascinating space. I think it is kind of leading edge in some ways. It's informative to the broader kind of platform ecosystem. And I think having a couple different players in the space and approaching it, attacking it in different ways is also, I think, a good thing for the broader kind of creator community.
There is just one more question, which I think is really good for all creators, if you have time, Ben.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the final question is, when people start to monetize their content, obviously they start to get interest from what you might call agents or MCNs. Are there any sort of general piece of advice about whether you should sign for an MCM, or any pitfalls, or what should a creator think about? Because obviously, when you're a creator, you start to get unsolicited emails, and maybe people are not really sure how to treat these. It's like, I've got my first invitation to join an MCN, and I just sign up for the first one. Is there anything you could add to that?
So there are different stakeholders. So you have like the MCN, you have talent managers, talent agents. Like they provide different services or different functions. Just kind of like playing this back, and I think creators in the past were taking on agents for representation as they were kind of looking to expand off of platforms like YouTube, so into television, into film, where I think a lot of the agencies have assets and a lot of strength to kind of bring to the table. I know a lot of the talent agencies today are pretty active in brand sponsorship, because they have other kind of talent that they represent and do a lot of brand endorsement deals, and that deal flow is come and expanded into the digital kind of creator ecosystem, which is great. And I think with talent managers, I've seen a lot that are really good at helping creators kind of in their planning, their direction, but also kind of just getting organized. And I think when you're having a lot of inbound, kind of trying to process what things and opportunities kind of go and take on. And in some cases, it's like compartmentalizing. Like, if I want to focus a lot on my content strategy, there's a lot of other aspects of what I'm doing in terms of planning, travel, engagements, and how that's kind of done. And I think having that resource in place is quite good. I think when it comes to MCNs, they've been in the ecosystem for quite a while now, and I think in early days of YouTube, getting access to channel support, content operations, that wasn't something that was readily available to all creators and channels, and I think MCNs played a pretty vital role in getting scale and bringing access or tools and services to a wider number of channels than would otherwise going to get that directly from YouTube. And those businesses themselves have actually evolved over the years. And so I think today it's, I don't say that there's a right or wrong, but I think it maybe not a great answer, but I think it really depends creator to creator and what their goals are, their aspirations are, what kind of support and services they actually kind of need. And I think by kind of understanding that, then it maybe becomes clear, like, is it the right time to actually go take on an agent? Is it the right time to go take on a manager? Is it the right time to go and sign with an MCN? And I'd say first is understanding like what your goals and objectives are. And I'd say if you're in conversation with any of those three groups, is also kind of being clear of, this is where I am. This is actually what I'm trying to achieve. And then hearing back, how are they going to help you achieve those goals?
Emma Birdie Donson asks, bring in the dog.
Bring in the dog. Oh.
This was folks. This was a joke before on the live stream. Ben was joined by a lovely dog just as we were prepping, and so I was wondering if you could make a cameo appearance at the end here. Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on vidIQ. Do let us know where we can find you with Next 10 Ventures, and are you accepting channels still into Next 10 Ventures?
Yeah, so I would say I would recommend folks if they want to. Here comes the dog. So the best way is next10ventures.com, and we have a contact form, and you can get in touch with us, and our team can kind of can be in touch with you from there.
Awesome. He just was off shot there. Here he comes. If we can get lots of extra likes and subscribers for the appearance of a dog there. Can you just tell everybody, introduce the dog? What's the name? Witty. Hello to you, Witty. We hope you enjoyed the live stream. And it just leaves me to say again, Ben, thank you very much for having you on today. I hope you enjoyed this live stream, everybody. Do let us know with comments in the live stream, and subscribe to vidIQ if you aren't already a member of the vidIQ community. Thank you very much, Ben.
All right, thank you.
And it just leaves me to say, enjoy the rest of your video making day, and of course, have a fantastic weekend. Bye.